Okay, awesome. So, um, yeah, be you, your cheery self. Like I expect the trademark Vicky smile and the Vicky laugh throughout this episode.
Okay. All right. All right.
I feel like anybody who went to UCSD with you knows, like it's the
Yes.
Victoria smile, the Queen Victoria smile.
Yes.
I just want to welcome the listeners back to the next episode of the Banquet Hall podcast, the podcast where folks are tired of trying to find a seat at the table. So we decided to build our own banquet hall. And our guest here today, the Queen herself, Queen Victoria Gishoyi. How are you doing today, Vicky?
I'm good, Kyler. How are you? How are you?
I'm good. Right before we started recording, you mentioned that the rain just stopped in LA and is headed to San Diego. I can see the clouds starting to
Yes.
form. So after
Yes.
this, going to get like a nice cup of tea, listen to the rain, and watch my Lakers.
Good, good, good. Go Lakes. Go Lakers. And also
Yeah,
drive safely. Drive safely, everyone, in this rain, in this weather.
please drive safe because you know how us Southern Californians do once it get a little wet outside.
Everybody start wilding. They forget all the basics and fundamentals.
All the basics and fundamentals. But Vicky, you are next in a series of plenty of my friends that I met at UC San Diego that I've had on this podcast, and I think that's just kind of the basis of this is there's some legendary people who I went to school with, and people needed to know more about y'all's stories. And I
Yeah.
think that any story about Queen Vicky, I think it always starts with a discussion of the love you have for your hometown, the city that you're from. That's
Yes.
one of the things that I love the most about you. It's like, nah, like I'm Vicky, I'm from Compton,
Yes.
California. So
Yes.
why don't we start this interview with you telling folks just what it means to be from the city, what it means to be from Compton, and just what growing up in the city, the area of Los Angeles and Compton meant for you growing up.
Yeah. Yes, I'm Vicky or Victoria. Hi, everyone. I proudly say I'm from Compton, born and raised, still currently residing in my childhood home. The city means everything to me. I think I'm a, what do they call it? Like a third generation
Mm.
Comptonian, or that's what something my mom like a term that she coined. But my grandma, um she moved from Austin, Texas, and met my grandpa who moved from Pine Bluff, Arkansas. Late like in the well, my grandma, she went to like Centennial and Compton. So like I'm third generation and met my grandpa. They had like my uncles, had my mom, and they grew up in a town called Rich or in a neighborhood called Richland Farms. So yes, we do have farms in Compton. Like we have, I grew up in their neighborhood and seeing like the horses walk by, growing up and seeing like manure like in front of like the driveway and the chickens and the roosters. Like when I would spend the night and hearing them like early in the morning, different people having parties, quinceañeras and weddings, but I think that's just like a whole like LA kind of unspoken tradition.
Hmm.
But yes, like I grew up in the 90s and kind of was like sheltered, but also just like enjoyed driving in the city. I also have a rich legacy. My grandfather was a former city councilman in the 90s. And he also owned many, many, many different businesses. So from like a OG, they call it stationery store, but I guess like a OG Staples. And he was also one of the first uh business owners in the city to have like a restaurant,
Oh
particularly
wow.
black owned restaurant, black owned Chinese food restaurant with
Wow.
or Mexican like staff. So it was all types of things. But I had like my first birthday party there. Um I had or attended multiple like different church events where my uncle is also still currently a pastor at my church. So I have very deep like rich history in the city. I like to say like there's good things that do come from Compton, outside of like what the negative stereotypes that people have portrayed. Like obviously, like we have or different things I've heard from UCSD. It's like, oh, like are there still like gangs and stuff? Like, oh, like have you met Kendrick Lamar? And I'm like, nah. I mean, there's still gangs, don't get me wrong. Like I'm still in a certain type of neighborhood. I've actually think about I've lived in a certain type of neighborhood throughout my whole life, like all
Hmm.
since I lived in Compton. Gang affiliated, or notoriously like gang affiliated, Crip neighborhoods. But I think in terms of like the active, like what you see in the media or what you hear and people like rapping, like me personally, I feel like in my neighborhood, it's died down. Like it's dwindled down, like the whole like gang culture, but it's still alive. Like you still see more now. The Latino gangs are still like tagging, like every new spot when I take like my route, I'll see like just different things I pick up. But there was like instances, where I have been in drive-bys, where my brother has witnessed someone get killed, when I was back at UCSD, my parents didn't want to like tell me. And he had to like hide neighbors. So it's like it's pros and cons, but at the same time, like I feel like people from the city, they surpass any stereotype that has existed, that maybe we have continued to like portray ourselves like as Black and brown folks. But I mean, we have the greats. We have Kendrick, we have the Williams sisters, both Venus and Serena. They also have uh um an organization that honors their sister, one of their older sisters, Yatunde Price, who was unfortunately killed as a young at an early age in her 30s due to gun violence and affiliation. And we have a airport most people don't know about
Mm-hmm.
the city, where you can take classes like at a young age, or just at any age you can like ride around in like a helicopter. You can learn how to take aviation classes. I can't remember the young man or woman. I think it was a young woman who was from Compton, flew across like the East Coast and back. So it's like we have great things birthed out of like this city. In spite of like what everybody says. LA is not Compton, but Compton is in Los Angeles County. It is considered like what people say like LA, like Long Beach,
Mm-hmm.
Inglewood, South Central Los Angeles, Watts, like that is grouped into LA, but we do have our own city, we do have our own mayor, we do have our own school district, which most people don't know about. And I'm proud of my city. I don't know if I will still currently live in my city as my life progresses, but I definitely like have my parents. I inherited my parents' home and would still like to like maintain like that property when I get older. But I love my city. Like it has its ups and downs. We still have potholes, we still have all shit. We still have issues within our school district, but it's still great things. I'm
Mm-hmm.
proud to say like I have neighbors who I still have known, or known me since I was 7 when I moved there.
Mm-hmm.
I have neighbors or people who like known me since birth or before birth, or
Yep.
know my parents, and they're like, oh, like you're Cress, or oh, like you're Jackie's daughter. And I
Yep.
look just the splitting image like of my mom. So I kind of scare people like uh those who like know me or grew up in the church or just affiliated with my grandparents and like their legacy and etc. And they associate me with like my family and the rich history that we have been able to develop in the great city, my city. Yeah.
See, I knew you was gonna cook when we brought up Compton. That's why
Yes.
I had to
Yes.
give it your time to shine. But I
Yes.
think
Yes.
that just really highlights why I like asking people where they're from. And I had this conversation with Lynette last episode on the podcast. But I feel like when you come to a big campus like UCSD, you start to realize where people are from. And you just find a sense of camaraderie when you find people who are from similar neighborhoods as you,
Yes.
or who just get it. Because
Yes.
we're going to
Yes.
get into the conversation about UCSD in general, but
Yes.
it's like you hear I'm black, or you see I'm black, you hear I'm from LA, and it's like, oh, like what's the gang violence like? It's like y'all's definition of
No.
LA just come from the movies and the media things that
Yes.
you're seeing.
Yes.
And it's like, oh, like you must be smart. You made it out of Compton to get here. And it's
Yes.
like, dog, like, why are you putting all the extras on it?
Right. 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 And even so, like I think that was one of the main reasons why I chose out of I don't know, out of me having like a little rebel in me, why I chose to go to UCSD. I had the opportunity to go to Xavier in Louisiana, the Xavier University in New Orleans. I had the opportunity, I think at the time to go, I had like a full right to go to Tuskegee. My ignorant like mind at the time, 17. And I was like, I don't have anybody like in the South. Like I just
Yeah.
everybody's either in Kenya, in Buena Park, or in the city. So and I chose UCSD. That was the only UC that I got accepted into. But after attending what is it, the overnight program, and
Mm-hmm.
hearing about what happened, the incidences that happened in winter 2010, and just like the negative stereotype that was portrayed in my city. I'm just like, nah, like I'm gonna go just to prove everybody wrong. Like just to prove everybody wrong, which was probably at the time. Now that I think about it, I'm like, it should have been more than just me proving it wrong. But I think once I fell in love, like with the campus, obviously the beach, the different pluses, bonuses of attending like as a student. Sometimes I regret not like going to the beach as often, but I think the community that at the time I gravitated towards, that was the reason why I chose UCSD. And still, to prove people like, yes, we do have smart
Yeah.
people in Compton. Yes, we do have like the rappers. We have our athletes, DeMar DeRozan and
Mm-hmm.
what to say, Tayshaun Price, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Kyler, but just other athletes, and dismantling all the stereotypes that have been put in the city. But you do have like your people who are like, oh yeah, like what part of like LA are you from? At least my experiences. Yeah, what part of LA are you from? I say, okay, I'm from Compton. Like, what part are you from? Oh, I'm from like Pomona. I'm from Whittier. I'm from Valley. I'm like,
Yeah, it's like I see what you're going for, but we don't have
yes,
that's
it's
not
not
the
the
experience
same.
I'm looking for.
It's not this, at least people who know, like who grew up in the cities that I mentioned before, like your Long Beaches, your Inglewood, South Central Los Angeles, South Central LA. It's not like, oh, South LA. It's like, no, like from South Central, Watts, etc. And I think we all have had collective experiences up in our childhood, even though may have been the first time that we all met, but we all kind of grew up similar in LA. If you do know LA culture, like there's a Instagram, and I'm probably butchering it, the name, but it's like I think SRB in LA or
Yeah,
SBR in
something like
LA,
that.
something like that. And going through like the timelines whenever the page was launched, and I'm seeing like a bunch of my friends from church, from
Mm-hmm.
UCSD, like yourself, my brother, like I'll send him stuff, and he's currently going to Langston University in Oklahoma, the only HBCU in Oklahoma, but he still like knows the experiences that we
Yeah.
had growing up, even though he also like later in his teenage years he moved to Highland Park, but like home is home, like
Mm-hmm.
from 14, from 0 to 14, like that was home. And um seeing the what is it called, seeing like the Converse or different shoes like hanging on
Mm-hmm.
shoe lines, like people know what that is, and now like it's made into like a whole like hat, like a whole lids hat, like people know that's like LA culture, or people know like tacos, like LA
Mm-hmm.
tacos, but versus like going to, I don't know, going to like the South or making like homemade, like nothing's like hidden except for like LA tacos.
Talk
Um,
that.
yes. So it's or just Southern California in general. Like I did have my good fair share of like good tacos in San Diego. But yes, LA, even though we all had different we may have grew up in different neighborhoods or different areas across, like we still have LA culture within us, and may probably like help shape us into like the professionals that we are, into the Black students that we were at the time attending UCSD that was really not meant for Black students, but we made it work to the best of our ability. We made our community within like a bubble, but then La Jolla, which I like to tell people, it's like the San Diego version of Beverly Hills. Yeah. I know that was
Yeah.
cool, but yeah.
Oh no, but that's what energizes me, like hearing people talk about where they're from. And I think just hearing another person from LA talk about just that LA culture, because I don't know, I feel like sometimes when you just be scrolling through social media, LA got a lot of haters. It's like, oh, LA ain't even all that.
Yeah.
Everybody in LA fake. It's like y'all don't even know what y'all talking about, first of all.
Yes. Yes.
Um,
Different transplants, they'll come in. And don't get me wrong, like I have my share. I still want to move out, but I know like I'm gonna come back with home. I know I want to be intentional in raising a family here, not necessarily in Compton, but like raising it in LA County, I'll say. But yeah, I definitely hear like that most recently, like in the pandemic, like it's been a lot of like LA hate. And I'm just like, okay, but why are you here?
but
Like, why
why
didn't
are
you come
you
here? Like,
here?
yeah, yeah,
But one thing that you kind of touched on when you talked about like the neighborhoods that you grew up in, and just like the importance of neighbors, of community, uh, a lot of that those are a lot of intangible things. Like the fact that you can go to your neighborhood, your neighbor comes outside, is like, oh, like Vicky, how are you? Like somebody who
Yes,
knows who you are. Like you
yes.
said, they've seen you grow up. Like I feel like that's the type of community that's really uplifting to be around. And
Yeah.
you go juxtapose that to going to school in La Jolla, where it's a lot more isolating. You're in this college environment where there's not a lot of Black people, not a lot of people that look like you, and even some of the people that look like you aren't greeting you in the same neighborly
Hmm.
way
Yes,
that
yes,
you're used to. And
yes.
so I'm just curious about like some of your finding community at UC San Diego and what that
Mhm.
community meant for you. Like I'm thinking specifically about some of your involvement with BSU and then also the African Student Association. I know you
Mhm.
talk about being Kenyan as a big part of your identity as well. So what
Yeah.
does that community or what did that community look like for you at UCSD?
Yeah, I would say I didn't heavily get involved in ASA until my second year, more so like 30 and up, but for sure BSU, like I think like how I mentioned, the overnight program, I found my community. ASA I probably found spring semester 2012. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but if it wasn't like for BSU, if it wasn't for the people who I made connections with, who I have like lifetime friendship and sisterhood with, I probably would have not came back sophomore year or even some of the other semesters, truth be told. I knew very on I wanted to be intentional about being involved like in BSU, but also like being involved in other organizations that I felt like was taking and would like still a part of like my identity, such as like some of the Christian organizations. At the time I was like involved in InterVarsity, and then I found like a
Mm-hmm.
church home with CYUAG, and they are a Christian organization, a part of Grace Covenant Church in San Diego, near like the Lincoln Heights area. And I felt like everybody, even like my roommates, now that I think about it, like my roommates like, oh, like Vicky, you're not going to BSU, or like, oh, like, can I come? Like, is it racist for me to want to come? And I'm like a white person, or I'm like a Latina, and I'm like, oh no, like you can come, like it's all welcome, but just know like some of the conversations they are going to be intentionally around Black students, you know, around Black people, around Black lives, especially the advocacy that has came up with regards to the police brutality that was being acted upon not only on campus but obviously nationwide. Um, and yeah, I feel like some of the friendships that I met and the community I gained, I was very intentional about. I was very proud of. At times, it was like a family. Sometimes, like you
Mm-hmm.
get frustrated. Sometimes you get angry, especially like in leadership. And I know, like we were in leadership together. But it's like back home. Like I get in arguments, like with at the time with my mom and with my dad, with my cousins. But I know, like I always have a place to come back home to, and I felt like I had that home with BSU, and even with ASA, like I do identify as a Black woman, as a Kenyan woman. My father was Kenyan, hence my last name. Kenya, excuse me, is a country in East Africa. Also where Obama's father, former President Barack Obama, where his father was from. And even though I my I grew up speaking like the language that my father spoke, Swahili, and then our tribal language or dialect language, Kikuyu. I was very fluent as a child. Life, you know, life happens. I forget
Yeah.
it. But I still very much was growing up and had two different sides, like to my life, you know. And I was grateful of the fact that like I was able to be surrounded by my Black friends, by my African friends. And sometimes those friendships, especially with UCSD at the time when I came in, it was 1.2%. Oh yeah, both of those communities are going to intersect heavily, you know. And not saying that some of the other communities like Mecha or like the Filipino organization, like that we also didn't intersect. I definitely have similar uh experiences growing up in Compton with some of my Latina friends or Latinx friends, or those who do identify like as Mexican, El Salvadorian, Guatemalan. That's my friends who grew up back home, and they were very intentional, very intentional in telling you like, I'm not Mexican, I'm El Salvadorian. I'm not Mexican, I'm Honduran, and respecting that, you know, like respecting that. Um, but yeah, community, it was necessary for me, and I'm pretty sure necessary for you too as well, Kyler, and some of our other colleagues back at UCSD.
Colleagues, we're such adults now.
The homies, gang. That's what we used to say, like gang, and finding, I think for me it was very difficult finding professors, which I think was just a lack to UCSD, trying to hire like more intentional Black faculty and staff. It did come, like those mentors did come later down the line, but as a freshman, barely had Black professors. I think the first year I had a Black professor was, what was that class? And it was like one unit, gospel choir with
Mm,
Evan Anderson. And that was the
hmm.
first, just like, oh my gosh, like I'm at home. But even with that class, it was like, I'm the only Black student, Black female student. We're singing all these gospel songs that I grew up knowing in my Baptist church back in Compton. And I have all of my fellow like peers and students in the class who are identifying in other races, whether they're Vietnamese, Korean, and they're like, how do you know this song? Or how do you know this? Or, oh, like, I think you should sing it like this. And I'm just like, okay, like, I'm gonna just listen politely. Like, you got it. Like, you have the formal training. You're here for
Wait,
theater,
wait, 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 wait.
etc. Yes, I had some instances, and
Wait,
people try to
wait.
correct me. I remember it was like one,
No, hold on, Vicky, hold on.
huh?
I just need it to be very clear for the listeners. Are you telling me that in a gospel choir class taught by a
Mm-hmm,
Black man,
mm-hmm.
you
And I'm the
had
only Black student. Mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm.
you had non-Black students saying not like that, like this?
Yeah, like I'm grew up as a soprano. So from 5 years old to even coming back from UCSD, like I'm singing high and I'm with other sopranos who have much more formal training. Um, in terms of like singing, probably had to audition in UCSD. And I'm like, okay, auditioning versus like growing up in the church, growing up knowing the songs. I don't need to have, except with the exception of like 2 songs out of the 6 songs that we learned to have to perform in the choir. I don't need lyrics. It's in my
No, it's in the
it's
DNA.
in the soul. And you're telling me how to sing it as a soprano versus what I've known for at the time 18 years of my life.
That's
Like,
anti-Black as hell.
okay. Like I was just like, okay. And I would unspoken UCSD and just Black like culture in general. Like when you see each other, you pass, you give the head nod. And those be certain instances where I would hear from the teacher and vice versa, where I'm like, okay, head nod, or oh, like he'll look at me, I'll look at him, or oh, like trying to help people sing their off note, their high pitch, low pitch,
Ugh.
all the things, Kyler,
This
all
doesn't
the
feel
things.
right.
Yes, but that was my first time, one of the first like experiences in microaggressions.
Yeah,
Many
of course.
UCSD. It's UCSD. And even other UCs, don't get it twisted. It's like
Yeah, of
it's
course.
just 1 out of 9. But yes, that was one moment. I'm just like, right, like I let you got it. You got a big dog. Like you got it. You got it,
And see,
sweetheart.
this is kind of the fundamental like problem with that Black students face in higher education, because I feel like you leave your neighborhood, your family, it's very cultural, it's very lift as we climb. You come into these academic spaces, and then people try to really theory you to death. And
Yes,
I love academics. I love a good theory. I think a lot of this is very valuable for these intellectual conversations. It
yes.
ain't no theory to what goes on in a Black Baptist church. It's
It's
all spirit.
it's spirit, it's soul, it's at times it's frustrating because you want to leave and your
Yeah.
mom is talking to
Yeah.
other attendees. It's the different types of um spiritual things that happen, such as like people they'll falling out, they're catching the Holy Ghost. It's being on the usher board. It's funny moments when you hear like a deacon sing off key. Like it's different things. You get in trouble for passing notes. Like those are all the things, at least, that I had embedded into the culture. And now I'm coming to a much more formal space where I'm singing songs, and some of these songs were uplifting to people within our DNA, trying to make it through and
That
survive
part.
slavery in this country. And now you're telling me that I'm singing it wrong, and I'm just like, I'm singing it the way that I grew up, that my big mama, who was at the
Yeah,
time,
go
birth,
tell Big Mama that I'm singing
like,
it wrong. How about that?
come on now, like, but okay, you got it, like, you got it.
You
When
got
I'm
it.
already, or they're looking at me like, oh, you don't need, I know this song, right? I know this song. If it's not this song, it's maybe a different rendition, because us Black folks, we like to little, jazz things up, you know. But yeah, there was like some of my other, I made like one or two friends within like the class or within those 10 weeks. But the other people, like in the soprano section, they were all like, look at me. I'm like, I don't need the lyrics. Like, I got it, sweetheart. I got
And
it.
this is like, I think when I talk to people about like why college is so great, it's because of those experiences that happen between the lines. Because this is where we retreat back to Matthew's D1 apartment at night, and
Yes.
it's like, listen, this is what happened in my gospel choir class, and
Yes.
we all
Yes.
looking at you like, for real, because it's that
Yes.
related experience. And
Yes.
that's when I look back at the best times at UCSD, it's always like, y'all won't believe what I found out on this campus today. Y'all won't believe
Yes.
what this person said to me today. It's
Yes.
those moments of community that are so essential and so important. So what I want to ask you is, like, during these times of like microaggressions and when UCSD got stressful, what does that self-care look like, both for yourself and for community? Because I know for a fact that you love to dance. I know dance is something that's very important for
Yes.
you.
Yes.
And I know, as from a community aspect, I think we did a lot of community care during the time that our paths crossed the UCSD. Whereas
Mhm.
did you sleep last night? You eating today?
Yes.
Like, really being able to check in with people in
Yes.
that way. So, what does that
Yes.
community care look like out on a college
Yes.
campus?
Um, in my first year, I'm dealing with a lot. I don't know how to ask for help. I'm the only, I think, maybe if not every Black person or student at UCSD, this is the first time that they are in commune and having to sleep in the same type of environments with non-Black people. So my first year, I went back home a lot. Like, I went back home. I still was a part of like BSU. I still made friendships still to this day, 10 plus years, maybe now 12, 13. But that first year I was like, okay, if I miss home, let me go back home. If at the time I'm too scared to ask one of my friends if they can press my hair because I don't know, it's my birthday or it's a 6 winter formal. I don't know if they can do hair. I don't know if I can trust that they can do hair. I'm gonna go back and take the train to Solana Beach, take the train from Solana Beach to Union Station, and just kick it, decompress, come back, and try it again on Monday, right? Or Sunday night. Second year to fifth year, I was a super senior, so I did 5 years. I was able to build community and was like, okay, like, you know how to braid hair, okay, you know how to drive and I don't have my license, okay, can you pick me up here? Oh, can we go to the store together? Like, I also had those same experiences, don't get me wrong, with some of my roommates who I still have and are in communication with still to this day, my non-Black like roommates. But yeah, I don't want to ask my roommates like, oh, like, I need to look for hair. And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, I need to braid my hair. Like, it's pressed, like it's poofy. Like, I want to switch it up. And they're like, oh, well, I don't have time. I'm like, I don't have time. Like, let me hit up somebody from BSU. Let me hit
Mm-hmm.
up Brie, like, let me hit up anyone, and later down the line I was able to like feel comfortable in my skin, feel comfortable in advocating for hair products as in my natural hair journey, which I think I transitioned in at UCSD. Times where I'm like, I want some soul food, and I can't even think about the restaurant still to this day. Like, I can't remember it, but they were like always the go-to caterer for UCSD events. Or
Felix's.
yes, Felix's, yes. And at one point, like, it closed, and I lost my mind because I'm like, I miss home cooking back home. I don't have enough money to drive or have the capacity because I'm tired. I want food, and that would be the time when we were like, okay, well, y'all hungry, let's go. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like, or we all going to the hair shop, to the to the beauty salon, let's all go together. Like, we're all going to a party, let's go together.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's go together. And that was what I came across. Like, even the times, and it's funny, people still say like UCSD is socially dead. And I'm like, my experience was lit. I think probably too lit to the point I got an academic disqualification twice, but it's okay. Like, I still made it through UCSD and I'm here today. I'm here today. But that was my outlet, dancing. So I joined like it didn't exist at the time, but like the ASA dancing and
Mm-hmm.
different parties like off campus, making sure that we have rides going and making sure that we're all coming back to camp, well, coming back home, but coming back to campus together. Like, I remember when you had your car, you were one of those people. Like, if we all going together, we're all leaving together. If I'm going together, we're all coming back to campus together. When I became an RA and y'all have no food, come to this event. We'll feed
Mm-hmm.
you. And even you holding, Kyler. Thank you for holding. And I talked to some of my interns and volunteers and youth for holding me accountable. Especially, I didn't know what depression was until I was at UCSD. I didn't know that, oh, depression's like not like, oh, like I'm having suicidal thoughts. It's like I'm neglecting to eat. And I didn't know when I got so busy that you challenged me and other phenomenal leader, Jasmine Livingston. And you challenged us. You're like, have you eaten? I'm like, damn. But I'm like, no, like I had oatmeal and I had like hot Cheetos and I had like my green tea. And you're like, that's not food. I need you to eat something of substance. Okay. So I'm like, damn, okay, I'll try again tomorrow. Like, that's depression. I'm so busy and overworking myself. I'm not taking care of my Black body that I need to survive in order to get this degree that's expensive as hell so that I can get a job and sustain myself. But you reminded me to ground myself and to eat and not the work that I'm doing, whether it was BSU and ASA or just trying to get through the quarter system. It's important, to eat and
Yeah.
ask for support, ask for, do you need money today, or do you need what's the thing called, like dining dollars, or try to
Mm-hmm.
like um and as a leader, it's good to have someone hold you accountable, someone to see you and not just see you like as a leader, but see you like as a person. Like, you need to feed yourself, goddamn. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think what was most important for us all within that accountability was that we knew how to talk to each other because we all understood like this is for sure a grind. And I didn't even go back to some of what you talked about, like some of the stereotypes with folks who grew up in like South Central LA, Compton areas, and like just all the stuff that we've experienced or seen people and know people who've experienced.
Mhm.
I used to like want to tell people like, yo, the college shit's kind of easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like the
Yeah.
college, this UCSD stress, like, nah, this isn't the stress that
Yeah.
I come from. Like, there's
Yeah.
real life stress out there. And
Yeah.
I feel like when you
Yeah.
come from that level of grind and see the toll that stuff could take on people's bodies, you also have to recognize that same grind within your friends who might be experiencing
Yes.
depression and say, like, yo, I know you want to save the world, but
Yes.
damn dog, you can't eat a burger for lunch.
Yes, yes, yes. You want some fruit, you want
Yeah,
some onions and like a grilled chicken, even though like it's not an In-N-Out burger, but it's something and you need to
it's
eat, like,
something.
you need to feed yourself. And I definitely came across phenomenal lives, some of my like lifelong friends, people that we both love, Kyler, who, to your point, 100%, like UCSD was an outlet.
Hmm.
UCSD was a safe haven where it wasn't necessarily like they're dodging bullets, but they don't have to deal with the heaviness that comes from back home. They don't have to deal with
Yeah.
family issues. They don't have to deal with friends, and even sometimes too, like friends' mindsets. I don't know about you, but that's a whole thing that we can talk about too. Is like when they come back home, people think like, oh, like you so college, or oh, like, well, I could see why my mom would say that, in terms of like me getting into like advocacy work, but oh, Miss Angela,
Yeah.
sister, oh, like you think like you're this and that. And I'm just like, no, I'm just trying to get a degree.
Yeah.
On my peers, they were like, this is UCSD was my way out. Some people have sports, some people have education. And that's one thing too. I hope that all your listeners know, what I constantly remind at the time, some of my interns, is college don't always work for everybody. It looks differently. You have your path, like if you are tired of school, like cool, like maybe try a trade, or if not, gain some college, like gain some skills, take a free college course, or take a course on Coursera or a Google certificate, so that you can build up whatever you would like to do. If it's entrepreneur skills, whatever you want is, and I feel like um for me, going to college, like, it was no brainer. Like, I had no other fucking
Mm-hmm.
choice. I could have went down the street to Dominguez, and I chose not to, because I'm like, I didn't want to be like, I'm not gonna grow. I'm not gonna grow in this city, like, at all. So I need to get away. And I feel like for me, and some of our other close friends in community, in gang, that UCSD was definitely like an outlet, so that they
And
don't have to deal with the heaviness back home.
absolutely. And I want to kind of push us to talk a little bit more about that Cal State Dominguez point, because one of the things that I also want people to know when it comes back to like, oh, like you went to UCSD, like it's like, nah, like it's not even like that. Like the students at Cal State Dominguez are also some of the brightest students on
Yes,
this planet too. Like
yes.
that is a California State University.
My
It
mom is an alum of Cal State Dominguez Hills. My aunt and uncle met and both graduated from Cal State Dominguez Hills. One of my cousins, who's one of the most smartest people I know, is a alum from Cal State, or from Dominguez, and now is in a master's program in public health at USC.
it
Like, but
exactly.
it is, and I hated it in college, and even coming back and working with youth, it's like Cal States are a bad thing. Like, Cal States, like, it's like Cal States are easy to get in, and Dominguez is like, might as well be Compton College. And I'm just
Exactly.
like, no, like, it's still an amazing university. It's still a university that but that the current, now first elected Black woman
Hmm.
here in the city of Los Angeles, that's her alma mater. So don't get it twisted. Like, don't get it
Exactly.
twisted, or don't let these teachers in high school, or your counselors, or anyone, like, knock some of these institutions versus, I don't know, a USC, which is in the hood. Like, either way, somebody's gonna get a degree. And my issue, which we can talk about too, is like post undergrad, and all, like, the navigating the different spaces, like having that mentality, thinking. And don't get me wrong, some people are blessed enough to have six figures, or have that 50,000, or have 50,000 up. Let's just say that 50,000 up, or 40,000, like 6 months after graduating. And where UCSD is calling, is sending those mailers like, hey, Tyler, congratulations. Like, you want to donate? And I'm just like, bro, like, I have
Donate what?
I have $40,000 in loans, and I have this degree, which I thought I was gonna get at least $30 an hour. I'm making $19 an hour, and you're asking me to donate to an institution that almost broke my soul, from like coin Beyonce. Like, are you kidding me? Like, no, I'd rather donate to the BRC, or I'd rather donate to Six, because I love Six. Like,
Hmm.
I later learned, like, you have to be selective in, like, donating to, like, a Black alumni scholarship, or
Yep.
donating to college, or donating to certain departments. Like, if not, all of your money as a donor is going to go to the
Generally.
yeah,
Yep.
generally it's going to go to, like, this new amphitheater, which I'm like, I'm very impressed with UCSD. Like, I really wish we had some of these things, but I'm also still just grateful for my experience now. But I'm like, y'all have a whole amphitheater. Y'all have now Target, which I learned is in campus, is on campus.
Yeah, they forget the amphitheater. They got Tarjay.
Yeah, yeah, Kyler. Yeah. Y'all have
That's
a whole
why
grocery store. Like, y'all
when
have,
I
like,
be talking
Target.
to students and I'm like, I hear you. I do the UCSC. I hear you. It sucks here. There's not a lot of black people, but y'all got 3 point plus % of black students and a Target. Y'all winning.
And have a trolley. When I was a freshman, what,
Y'all got the
all
trolley.
2011, they were talking about, and we voted on when we wanted to have a trolley. I thought that this trolley was going to be built during my time at UCSD. Obviously, I've graduated now 7 years ago. 7 years, 6 years later, are you kidding me? I don't have to ask a friend or ask roommates to take me downtown or to go see
What?
a Padres game. I can literally take and get on campus and take a whole train that they were talking about and get there safely and get there back and use probably my student ID card.
Yep.
And I'm just like, are you kidding me? Like, this
It's a
is,
wild thing. But
and
that's
you
also
in
why
San
these
Diego.
stories but that's also why these stories need to be told, because I feel like sometimes people like don't know exactly what these timelines look like. But when I talk to some students, like, no, like I was at the meeting.
Yes. 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 To plan, or I was at the meeting to plan, or some of my
Yes.
colleagues planned and implemented and sometimes overslept and missed classes to fight for Black housing, because of their experiences and other Black students' experiences, Black Caribbean, African experiences who didn't have Black housing. I am proud to say, like, when I left UCSD, at least that was one thing that was gonna like happen. That was implemented in in six, which I love. And just provide a great different experience than from what my peers and other students, what they face, the microaggressions, the intentional racism, sometimes over
Mm-hmm.
racism. It's a different ball game, but I'm not going to dismiss like some of the UCSD students what they're currently going through.
Oh no, absolutely. That's why it's always like affirming what y'all are going through, because those are very real things. But it's just
Mhm.
also fun to let them know, like, nah, like I guess more so the mess for me was like, nah, keep up the fight, because I saw the person who signed this in, like,
Yes.
just keep up the fight. And I want
Yes.
to kind of start to bring us towards some of what you've done post UCSD too,
Mhm.
just because I think that just continues some of that community work and that community
Yeah.
leadership.
Yeah.
But I realized that in that entire, I think we've been talking about UCSD for like 30 minutes already. I don't even know if you told the people, what did you study at UCSD, Miss Super
Yeah.
Senior?
Yeah, so originally I entered UCSD as a human biology major. I wanted to become a pediatrician. Did like classes or did like different pipeline programs in high school. Um, and I just knew I wanted to be a pediatrician until I took those chemistry classes and I started getting F's and just students in general. It's okay if you have imposter syndrome, like even at 29, some of that comes up. But for me, going to a small school, a small charter school, four top four, and now getting my first F on campus, it shook me. Like it shook my whole world. Like, whoa, I've never got an F. I mean, in classes, like in different tests and stuff and quizzes, but like on report card shook me.
Hmm.
So ended up moving into a field of public health, and that kind of like changed my entire like perspective. I was like, whoa, like it seems like this is a new major. Having
Hmm.
conversations with my parents, and I felt like it's okay. I tell students all the time, it's okay if you change your major. I've changed it. Most of my peers have, if they entered as OChem or in the sciences, you're probably going to change. And that's what college is supposed to do. It's supposed to change like your mindset, expose you to different ideas and ideologies and different mindsets, cultures, etc. So when the public health major first started, it was a little wonky. I'm not gonna lie. Definitely had needed lots of improvement, and I'm glad to say, it did. But I had difficult professors, and was about to, like how I mentioned, get disqualified. So, I switched it to sociology. But when I said public health, my parents were like, "Whoa! Like you're not gonna be a pediatrician? Like you're not." Dr. Gishowi. And I'm just like, I can still enter the health field without and still help people and have my passion. And then be still like as a student, um, have conversations and understand like what that is. Like public health is understanding and realizing that there's an issue and a health disparity that exists within my city of Compton. I'm always gonna go back home where growing up I would see residents, I imagine, stand outside and wait in line to go inside this clinic walking distance from a Jack in the Box and like a not King Taco, but like one of these taco shops.
Mm-hmm.
And it's Saturday, and I see that they're still have a long line. Come back home, clinic is shut down. I'm like, well, where are all these people going to go to? That's a health disparity to me. Or seeing like there's constantly in the hood, in LA, there's a liquor store and there's a church on every corner, but
Every
there's
single
no
one.
Whole Foods, there's no Trader Joe's, there's no accessible. Now it's much more prevalent, but accessible farmers markets. Meanwhile,
Mm-hmm.
you see they have, I think it's every Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken, or
The
Wednesday.
farmers market don't exist no more. That's one of the biggest UCSD
That's a health
scandals.
disparity. That's a health disparity. That's a disparity in general because they brought in local like vendors, which Kyler, that broke my heart because I love the farmers market. But yes, that's an example of a health disparity and what I tried to explain to my family. End up graduating with sociology. Best experience I had was doing study abroad.
Mm-hmm.
If you do have the opportunity, students or anyone listening, and you have the opportunity not only to study abroad, but just to travel, to get
Mm-hmm.
outside of the four walls that exist or the four corners in LA or whatever city that you are from, see it, experience the world. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. It can be scary at times, but it's very positive, and it's also good to notice different distinctions between different cities and between different cultures, and what you appreciate back home, and uh what you find to be grateful, about, especially if you are visiting countries. I wouldn't say developing or underdeveloped or third world countries, but just countries in general. You always find something to be grateful for. Um, so yeah, so I got my master's in public health, still made my way back to public health and applied in my last year and got accepted to a university in LA called Charles Drew University of Medicine and Science, named after Dr. Charles Drew, Charles R. Drew, who is the surgeon and kind of responsible for the reasons why we have blood banking
Mm-hmm.
today. And his efforts in the wars in like World War I and World War II, he pretty much created like a system for us to be able to donate blood, to each other, to people who are in the services. Learned so much from the university. Of course, it's considered a HBCU and also Hispanic serving institution, so you're gonna have like your issues, but the faculty and the administration there, they're phenomenal. At least what I can speak from my master's program. Best program. Institution still growing, having some highs and lows, like a roller coaster. But my program, like, y'all can't tell me nothing about Drew. Like
There you go.
the curriculum, like it was amazing. I'm still happy to say like the impact that I had while there, and was able to make an impact for some of the interns I've interacted with. And now I have like one of my former interns who's currently in her first year at Drew, like full circle, full circle,
Mm.
full circle, who's also, her name is Amy Macias, who's also an alum of UC Santa Cruz. Yeah. But the work that I was able to do post UCSD was mainly in community health or community education. So I I did a lot. I did organizing, which went back to like, I don't think the experiences I've had at UCSD, if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have been a great organizer. I wouldn't have been able
Mm-hmm.
to feel confidently enough to outreach and have conversations with elder Latina women, because
Mm-hmm.
my experience growing up in LA, and also just um different backgrounds and cultures, with roommates and with other
Yep.
some of my peers in different classes. So without UCSD, I wouldn't have been a successful organizer,
And
and
let's
be.
expand on that for a little bit, real quick. Sorry to cut you off,
Mhm,
but
mhm,
I just want to really highlight how I feel like, because one of the big things people come into a college environment with, it's like, oh, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what major directly aligns with
mhm,
what I want to pursue. And I think that whether it's my own personal experience or working in admissions afterwards and having to answer that question for a lot of people, it's like, oh, what do I study? I think that
mhm,
yours, excuse me, I think that your story is such a good example of how you kind of combine it all together, because you talked about kind of starting with human biology. You talked
mhm,
about the upbringing of public health, and you talk about sociology. You and I even had social problems together, a
Yes.
sociology class. And I
Yes.
feel like all these things are coming up with how you care about community health. And
Yes.
one of my vivid memories from 2020 was going on like social media and seeing you being one of those frontline workers and
Yes.
helping not only help people with COVID tests and vaccines, but also spreading awareness, which is so important
Yes.
too. So
Yes.
just wanted to specifically highlight that because I think it's wonderful just how all these different interests come together. Like you were changing your major, figuring it all out, but all along the way, you still kept that kind of North Star of this community health and community care.
Yes, yes, that was my purpose. And even going back to that role and that job of organizing, that first year and a half that I was working, I served as like a intern and volunteer, which I those are the experiences and skills I got being an RA, being a part of both BSU and ASA. And then 2020, obviously all of our worlds changed drastically.
Mhm.
I needed to take a pause. I'm happy I did, with what was going down in the pipeline. So I took a moment of unemployment. I previously was working and provide like a health fair and apply for a grant with LA Care focusing on diabetes care. Was able to talk about my work and my experience and my story, even losing my parents within my program, and apply. And people always say like, you always provide for other people, and I'm like, well damn Vic, like you never provide for yourself. So I even utilized my work and applied for this program with WHO, the World Health Organization,
Mhm.
which is like another subset or like the health aspect of the UN, the United Nations. And I was able to talk about my work and apply for this program, this year-long cohort of phenomenal leaders under the age of 35. And I was blessed and fortunate enough to get selected. And I had imposter syndrome. I mean, I'm at this community event and I'm checking my email and I'm like, I see this Google form. They're asking this Google form for me to put like my flight and hotel information. I'm just like, well, what's this? What's going on? And I didn't realize I got selected. I threw in the trash. And I'm just like, please, y'all, go through y'all emails because you don't know what opportunities you're gonna miss out. But that shook me. So I got an opportunity, me and my other colleagues from around the world, doctors from UK and nurses in Malawi and people from Chile, from Indonesia, from Pakistan, from the UK, no, from Australia, etc. And here I am, Vicky from Compton. I'm just like, how am I here? How am I in Kazakhstan? First of all, let's talk about that. Which is a country underneath Russia, and all I know is Borat, which is an awful representation. Now that I
I was
look,
about to say I wouldn't have been know where it was at if you didn't just
awful
say it.
representation. And my family, I lost my parents at the time. My dad passed away earlier this year, so people are like, are you gonna go? And I'm just like, I guess. They're like, are is your where's your layover? They're like, in China. In China you're black. Like I was scared, but I was also, when I got there, like I felt so minuscule, like I felt so
Mm.
small. And I'm like, I'm surrounded by like legends, I'm surrounded by prime ministers, and who am I, Vicky? Like, and I got reminded from my advisor, like, Vicky, your story and that you told and the work that you're doing, you're making an impact worldwide, to the point that we selected you and your amazing 21 other colleagues out of 2000. Like, you are destined to be here. And there were some instances where it was like a conversation about like health insurance and about women giving birth, and I'm like, I haven't gave birth, I'm not a birthing mom yet, but I or a mother, I'm not a mother yet, but I'm able to talk about black experiences, black mother
Mhm.
experiences, talking about like my best friend who gave birth to my goddaughter that year. Beyonce gave birth, Serena's, and they are black esteemed women, and that's like a disparity in itself. And people were like, whoa, like Los Angeles, like there's health disparities in Los Angeles. I'm like, oh God, now I have to explain to people if there's homeless people in LA and they see
If they don't
how
know.
they don't know. Like people are shocked every time they come, and I have to show them around like Skid Row. Like they're like, this is awful. I'm like, well, this is not what they're going to show you on media. And constantly bringing it back home. Like all the hashtags I did from the UN and everything, I do hashtag from Compton to whatever country it is, from Compton to Kazakhstan, from Compton to Geneva, Switzerland, like letting people know this is where I'm from. this is the opportunity I had. I can't be the only one. So y'all must also continue to do the work so that we can put like Compton, we can put LA, we can put UCSD folks like on the map to the world, and also bring their experiences back home to us, you know? But COVID shook my world. I no longer did organizing. No longer did advocacy work. My role drastically changed from being unemployed, which I was my own doing because I didn't feel comfortable, to like, okay, it's now May. I guess I should go back to work. Shit's getting real. I know I can't just be sitting back at home and on Instagram and checking the verses. Like, I know I can also make an impact and do my part when I felt ready to. And I did, I think after a month and a half, plus like I wasn't making money. So bills need to
Yeah.
be paid. And unfortunately bills never stopped for some people like myself in COVID. So that was, you know, one way. And outside of losing my parents, wouldn't wish that upon anyone, wouldn't even wish that upon Trump. Those from May to November was the hardest times of my life. Because every day, like how you're saying, I had the face mask. I went to work 2 weeks after 2 weeks before my grandpa died, and he came from Kenya the same weekend that Kobe passed. And he grew up having, or not grew up, but he ended up developing diabetes when I was like in high school, and in his 90s, and he was put in a nursing home. The nursing home staff, the nursing home in general, like we had like different phone calls and conversations, and video chats and people visiting, like my grandma also like wearing the mask and stuff. But a staff contracted COVID and passed it on to, which unfortunately spread to another patient, which spread to my grandpa. My grandpa died of both COVID and diabetes, which I like to tell people. So my work now impacted in so many levels and I didn't even realize it. So it's June. My grandpa, we're about to have his funeral. I'm grieving over him. And now we're finding out different verdicts and the world's in uproar. And especially if you're a Black person in that time, because you're not only facing COVID, a physical health issue, but you're also facing another physical issue, mental issue, emotional issue, because you're a Black person living in America and you're literally dying. You have your Ahmaud Arbery's, you have your Breonna Taylor's, and once George Floyd hit, so I'm battling my 2 weeks in back to work, a disease that killed my grandpa, 90 years old, of course, with the other underlying health conditions. And now I'm trying to help other Black and brown people throughout LA, but also still very fearful about the different police and different law enforcement that I'm going to come across. Like even at the point when we were providing testing, which is what I did, we tested before I transitioned on, we tested over 900, between 900 and 1,200 people in that month. And like how you said, Kyler, like capacities and resources were limited. So people would hit me up like, Vicky, I see you have your mask, like I see all the woes, like I see you're in the hot sun, like, but can I get an appointment? Can I have an appointment, Vicky? I'm about to go back to Kenya. They need a COVID test. I don't have time. LA County doesn't have any. And I'm like, just text me. Now I have to let my supervisor at the time know this is the number that I have. Do you mind? They're like, yes. Because sometimes we'll have appointments as small as 5. We'll have appointments as high as 75. And we will not eat lunch until everyone's seen. Like we served water. At some point, I got dehydrated because the summer is like scorching heat, people catching attitudes. And I'm just like, damn, I don't feel like nothing if I'm bucking today. Like, I don't feel like getting like no arguments. I don't want to lose my job because y'all are patients and I understand, I feel you, but this is what the circumstance is. You're mad because like, and I'm just like, it was a lot. it was times where I had to help elderly patients who couldn't read, you know, and navigating that and feeling comfortable enough to fill out paperwork, but also getting their consent. Times where I had to brush up on my Spanish kind of sort of skills and see like salud means health, you know, or fecha, I can't remember how to say birthday, but birthday, please put your birthday, you know. Times where I had to call patients' relatives and have them translate to their relative and be like, you have to complete this form, or if you don't have health insurance, it's fine, or if you're undocumented, it's okay. You can
Mm.
still come see us, no matter what Trump is trying to say at the time, like still come see us. Like you need care. You need to find out if you have this you're a bit scared, you would like to know the conditions of and knowing like your tests, so that was hard as hell. That was a trying time, but I knew for sure I had a purpose to give, and I did provide, and me and my team, like we traveled and helped testing uh different TV sets and like in Panorama City, in Buena Park, port
Mm.
drivers in Long Beach, like at the San Pedro like ports, obviously Compton, like all over LA. We travel East LA, everywhere, West LA, like yeah, it was a trying time, but I'm grateful for the lives we were able to help. And
Yeah.
the anxiety, whether or not you are positive or negative, like I just want to make sure that patients were well. I'm not a healthcare provider, like in terms of clinical, but non-clinical, yes, I can provide you water. Yes, we can try to put you in the shade. Yes, you can wait in your car if you don't feel comfortable enough. Like, yes, you can see us no matter what LA County says, like come see us, like, or come see me, text me. You have an appointment. My word is bond, like you have an appointment. Yeah. It's hard.
Absolutely. I gotta just give you a moment to just pause and reflect on a lot of what you just said, because I think that you started with talking about the trip to Kazakhstan and how you're with all these different leaders and you're like, why are you here? But this is exactly why. Like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think when you really take the time to reflect on just all that you were able to accomplish, because hell, if in my eyes, like I wonder who the others are if they are as good as leader as you, like because
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
importance of community. That's the importance of being able to help people share stories, because it's like, yeah, you did all of that while still battling some of the most traumatic stuff that has happened in your
Battling
life.
grieving. Yeah, battling grieving at times, and even trying to help like my family, like, okay, our grandpa got it. Let's get my grandma in. Or at times where when the vaccine came out and I was still hesitant. I'm in health at the time a healthcare professional, I was still hesitant about getting the vaccine and helping provide that for my church. I helped conduct like the same things I was doing, help conduct and create different spreadsheets, create appointments. And I have a full-time job, create different appointments and provide translation. If I can't provide it, I'm gonna find somebody else who will. I'm gonna make sure I have coffee for LA County Department of Public Health mobile vaccination unit. And my uncle was like, do we have to? I'm like, no, you don't have to, but this is what I learned from plus months of doing mobile testing. Like people, they fed us, and
Hmm.
they gave us water. Times I got hit on, unfortunately, like it's all the things and all the things in healthcare. Oh my god. But yes, like providing good quality service, I think that's overall like the arching theme is like I'm going to provide no matter what access. And if I have the opportunity to provide service, I'm going to provide service. If we're going to give water and we're going to have healthcare providers, let's provide water. Let's provide hospitality. Let's provide coffee from Starbucks, donuts, whatever we can so that y'all can serve our community in general. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that is so important for folks to who are listening to be able to hear all of that, because I think when we talk about the importance of frontline workers and those who are really at the front of the battle, like of course there are the doctors and the folks in the hospitals, but there are so many people who are risking their lives day in and day out, but
Mm-hmm.
also just making sure that people know that their lives matter and that people
Mm-hmm.
are able to get the answers that they deserve. So thank you for sharing all of that about healthcare.
No
In the
problem.
time that we have left, I wanted to make sure to at least give you a little bit of opportunity to talk about Black Girl Leadership Academy,
Yes.
which you are the co-founder of. I'll actually
Yes.
be interviewing Jazzy next week, so I'm excited to have her on the podcast to talk about BGLA a little bit. But
Excellent.
Black Girls Leadership Academy, founded by Black women leaders from various states and professional backgrounds, who all share a common goal to empower young Black girls and women. So, talk a little bit about just why you're involved with BGLA and just what
Yeah.
it means for that Black girl leadership to be at the core of what you're doing.
Sure. So me and Jazzy, both phenomenal leaders, met at UCSD from Compton. She's from South Central. Like it just worked hand in hand. And at the time, she's still currently in the East Coast, but she was working with a civic organization, and I was in the healthcare field. And we noticed in the pandemic lots of different missing gaps with regards to Black people, specifically Black women and Black girls. So like our healthcares were affected. Black women, at least from my perspective, and in the health industry and public health industry, we're the frontline workers, we're the nurses, we're the receptionists, and we noticed lots of gaps. We noticed that students were lacking resources. Students were going to like, there was a picture, I'll never forget it, uh a Latina student who was in a Taco Bell parking lot in Zoom. And I'm just like, that's a gap. Like, how do we let it get this far, and I think a lot of my family members, they actually understood what public health was. They're like, oh, like this is what you're preparing for. I'm like, yes, this is what we talked about at UCSD and prevent it. And we're trying to prevent it. And now here we are in the midst of COVID. And now it's all these different social gaps, from education to mental health to fair pay to providing resources for women seeking higher education or seeking resources in their careers, and we notice that oftentimes Black women provided so much mentorship, whether it was for majority for both of us, I can say informal, like, baby, you need some money, okay, your mom and dad are not here, I'm gonna slide you in church, I'm gonna slide you some money, and I found that some the women in my life, if it wasn't for them pouring into me and Jazzy at a young age, we would not be the phenomenal leaders that we were. So we noticed that in COVID, and we wanted to make an impact, like her being in the policy civic engagement side, me being the health side. Jazzy, let's get together. Like, she's like, Vicky, like, this is an issue, and I know that we can do something greater, even beyond LA. Like, we can do something nationally, globally. And I was like, okay, Jazz, like, how are we gonna do this? So we decided to come up with like-minded women who also share the same goals and vision, and providing a safe and secure, successful environment for Black girls and Black women to thrive here in the States. Even though home turf and home state is California. And our first year together was just kind of engaging, being consistent on social media. I was not the best social media expert, or coming up with content or captions, but just trying to find women who care about other Black women, about young Black girls and how they're being brought up into this world. Thinking about my goddaughter, my cousins, etc., and making sure that they have a mentor to help them lead and come up. And whether it's not they have an interest in marine biology or dance, if they're an athlete, or they would like to get their PhD, we wanted to be able to provide them the resources and network, and provide them one-on-one support with another Black woman within that profession or within that background. And that's how we came up with Black Girls Leadership Academy. Our first cohort has been very successful. We had 30 plus mentors and mentees from the nation, from Tennessee, from Colorado, from Utah, from obviously home turf being Cali. We have the most representation, but our cohort is ending this upcoming weekend. We're having a closing ceremony, but we have consistently provided programming around mental health resources, about how to take care of your mind, body, and soul, about having self-care, especially amongst the holidays, which can be really difficult, especially for me. Holidays are big and my parents aren't here. So providing that self-care for us, whether or not you are 11 years old and barely getting allowance, from your parents or guardians, or you are a student at UCSD or a student at Stanford, student at HBCU, and you're trying to manage the different loans or different money that you are getting as a work study student. Like, how can you take care of better your finances? How can you budget at a young age? And these are things that should be taught in school, but they're not. So you have to learn them in community. Why not learn them from like another Black woman who has probably went through the same experiences as you, as a single mom, you know, etc. So we are starting up our second cohort from June through December 2023. It has been very difficult, you know, wanting to get back in person, but also respecting and being mindful of our safety. So
Mhm.
everything's completely virtual, but we do have and aspire to have um, ongoing in-person chapters, you know, potentially. We would like to aspire to have and build up leaders culturally, and have the different things like how I mentioned in Compton, like seeing the um the the food deserts, while we have grocery stores, lack of grocery stores and healthy foods, when we have liquor stores and churches, right? Or now dispensaries in Cali. And we would like to empower some of these young girls to pick up like an issue, see and notice like what's going on in your community and how you would like to like make an impact. So we do have like that leadership skills that we would like to be able to provide these young women to take autonomy and own that you are a leader in your community, whether you are a 13-year-old, whether you are a 21-year-old. And yeah, it's been a journey in leadership. But I am proud to say, like, as a co-founder, as a leader in our board, and even just having other women believe in our mission, that we would like to create a better space for the next generation to come up under from under us. That's, I think, is what keeps me going. Me I don't keeps both me and Jazzy going. I can speak for her. And it's been an exciting journey. I know oftentimes we don't see Black women in leadership. I know I haven't. And I know, like, in different instances in my own personal journey and profession, like, what I see as a leader here is not what I ever want in this organization. What I see as a leader there is not what I ever want a Black girl to feel. As a student, as a professional Black woman, I want you to be able to advocate for yourself, to get a negotiation because you deserve it and you put in work. You know, if you don't put in work, let's help you build the tools so that you can do that, so you can advocate for yourself. So that's BGLA in a nutshell. Y'all can check us out like on IG, Black Girls Leadership Academy, or on our website, www.blackgirlslead.org. And yes, we would love to have you. We don't uh I guess the only criteria is if you have a passion and a drive and hunger, and you would like to gain mentorship as a young Black girl, knowing that you are not going to be alone, that whatever you dream and envision, that it can manifest. Like, it's not just like a wild dream, or like, oh, it's unthinkable. Like, it's possible, and we would like to help you generally. If you are a professional Black woman and would like to instill different gems and values and help another Black girl or Black young woman um, gain different insight and help them in their journey, this is the program for you.
What an awesome plug for BGLA. I can tell that you've had a lot of practice talking about it.
It's
Uh,
so many.
just two final questions for me, and then I'm gonna go ahead and let you get out of here.
All
The
right.
first one is, you mentioned the website and social media for anyone who might be interested in being a part of BGLA. My question is, if I'm someone listening to this podcast, like, let's imagine I'm some well-off person, I just happen to stumble across this podcast. How can
Yeah.
I support BGLA, whether that's something financially or other ways that folks might be able to support?
Yes, there's many different ways you can serve as a volunteer. We do have volunteer opportunities, for instance, going in person. We had volunteers who helped us, at least in LA, help us go to the Black College Expo, which took place late January. And we will start like having more in person workshops. If you would like to be a sponsor and sponsor either a mentoring fee, which we will be able to provide in the future and start implementing. If you would like to sponsor a young lady in the future, if you would like to sponsor monetary funds, that's also very much so welcome. If you would like to give to our and be a consistent donor, we do also have that. So if you can click on donate, because we are pretty much doing on the ground grassroots work, We would like to be able to provide money to bring in full-time staff. We would like to be able to seek funding and seek sponsorship to provide potential merchandise, be able to collaborate with other amazing organizations like Sister Love, like Black Girls Who Code, etc. So if you are interested in providing donations ongoing and or sponsorships, excuse me, you can once again go to our website or email us at admin@blackgirlslead.org and message myself, Victoria, Jaslyn, Jazzalyn, or Nancy.
Awesome. And then last but not least, just kind of an open-ended question. What is one thing or what are some things that you hope that people take away from this episode of the Banquet Hall?
Yeah. I'm Vicky. I love the color purple, as you can see in the background. I'm passionate about who I am, where I come from, passionate about the heritage and different traditions and things. I'm still also learning and unpacking from my childhood, from my parents. I'm proud of the city that I come from. I'm proud to be an advocate for people who don't have the voice to do so, who don't have the language in higher academia spaces. But also knowing like that you have greatness within you, whether or not you are in the health industry, if you're in entertainment, if you are an electrician, if you are a young person still just trying to find their way, if you're a Black person in Nebraska, if you are just come across this amazing podcast given by Kyler and you are not from California, no matter like where you are, where you come from, even if you don't identify as Black, Caribbean, or African, like there is also greatness within you. But also be proud of who you are, where you come from. Don't be afraid to ask for help. And yeah, if I could be a resource, find me on LinkedIn and or find me on Instagram. And yeah, there's greatness within you. Keep that light, keep that magic, keep that spark going. I know I have sometimes it's been dimmed at different times. There's some times where I lost it, and amazing people like Kyler, they continue to remind me to bring it back, and it's always been within me. So yeah, reminding you it's in you as well.
What beautiful words to end the podcast on. I just want to make it real explicit. Where can folks find you on Instagram?
Yeah, SHH Victoria or LinkedIn, Victoria, and then my last name, Gishowi, Gi as in geek, show as in show, and then he, like, there he goes, Gichohi on LinkedIn and SHH Victoria on IG.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Vicky, for taking the time out of your busy schedule to make an appearance on the podcast. Listeners, thank y'all for tuning into this episode. Make sure y'all follow the Banquet Hall on our social media platforms at Banquet Hall Pod. Leave us a 5-star rating. Tell a friend to give us a listen. And support Black girls leadership, whether you want to support with a donation, whether you are a Black girl listening to this podcast and want to get involved or know a Black girl. We talked about neighbors, we talked about community. Everybody got little cousins or little homegirl from the neighborhood. Like, make sure that you plug in BGLA and all the wonderful work that they're doing.
Yes. Thank you so much also, Kyler, for you having this platform and highlighting amazing people like myself, and hoping that this podcast will inspire future leaders to come from our hoods, from many different cultures. And yeah, wishing you also great success in your journey as well.
Thank you so much. And one last thing I'm going to highlight. I love, love, love how many times on this podcast you have referred to yourself as a phenomenal leader, because I think that's something that sometimes we all struggle with, is really affirming our own personal leadership and all the journeys that we have gone through. So happy to hear you call yourself a phenomenal leader, and I couldn't agree more.
Thank you, Kyler.
All right, y'all. We'll catch y'all next episode.